Chairman, and thank you and the ranking member for holding this hearing. And I also want to thank you, General Clapper, Mr. Secretary, for your service, as this might be your last hearing, and the men and women you lead. You know, you described in your testimony the increasing attacks we're seeing, not just from Russia, but China and other actors, Iran, North Korea, their increasing capabilities. The Chairman's opening statement pretty much stated that it's his view, and I certainly share the view, that we're being hit repeatedly because the benefits outweigh the costs for those who are taking these actions against us. Do you agree with that?
I do, and I think we all do, that this is for adversaries like, I'll just name North Korea and Iran. It is a very relatively low-cost acts that can cause havoc. And what I think we've seen over time is that they keep pushing the envelope as their capabilities improve, and they're willing to exercise those capabilities.
So if that's the case, and it's glad that I think there's some consensus here. You're talking about retaliating, upping the cost with all instruments of power. Mr. Secretary, you mentioned retaliate at time of our choosing, in the realm of our choosing, but it doesn't seem to be happening. Right? It doesn't seem to be happening because the attacks continue. So let me just give an example. Let's say Iran conducted, and you mentioned that they're being more aggressive, more risky than in North Korea, some kind of cyber attack. If we did something, maybe without announcing it, like the President announced the Russian counteractions, but let's say we didn't announce it. Let's say we did something where we essentially collapse their financial system, or something pretty dramatic. And we let them know we did it, but we don't have to publicize it. Do you think that's the kind of action that would say, hey, don't do this, or we're going to come back and retaliate at our time, our choosing, and crush you? How come we haven't done that yet? And do you think if we did something like that with the Iranians or the North Koreans, would that deter them in the future? Ms. Secretary?
Senator, I think you're getting right at the question of what do we mean by a proportional response in some instances,
or asymmetric, right? You're talking about asymmetric responses, which I fully agree with.
That's right, or in instances that are significantly serious and grave, whether a more than proportional response is required to really set that deterrence framework in place.
But isn't the key question right now that came from the Chairman's opening statement, which I think you agreed with, is that nobody seems to be intimidated by us right now. So let me give another example. Senator Inhofe asked a question early on about China. China hacked, allegedly, maybe you can confirm that, government-led, 22 million files. A lot of the SF-86 files that you use for background clearances, they have mine, I was informed by the government. Very sensitive information, as you know, that they could use against intelligence operatives and military members. And Senator Inhofe asked the question, did we retaliate again? What did we do? The answer that I heard from all of you was, well, we try to protect people like me, and I'm sure others, whose sensitive intel information and background information was compromised. But I didn't hear any claim of a retaliation on a huge hack, a huge, 22 million American federal military intel workers got hacked by the Chinese. So the President signed this statement with President Xi Jinping, the U.S.-China security agreement, but obviously, or General Clapper, from your testimony, the Chinese have not abided by that, have they?
They have.
I thought you said they're continuing to
I indicated my testimony. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. I thought you said in your testimony today that they continue to conduct cyber attacks.
They continue to conduct cyber espionage. They have curtailed, as best we can tell. There has been a reduction, and I think the private sector would agree with this. There has been some reduction in their cyber activity. And the agreement simply called for stopping such exfiltration for commercial gain.
So let me just ask a final question. Did we retaliate and
No.
up the costs against China after an enormous cyber attack against our nation?
We did not retaliate against an act of espionage any more than other countries necessarily have retaliated against us for when we conduct espionage.
But isn't that answer just part of the problem, that we're showing that we're not going to make it costly for them to come in and steal the files of 22 million Americans, including many intel officers?
Well, it's, as I say, people who live in glass houses need to think about throwing rocks, because this was an act of espionage, and we and other nations conduct similar acts of espionage. So if we're going to punish each other for acts of espionage, that's a different policy issue.
Senator King.